Hello, my name is Mahatma Karamchand Gandhi. I was born January 2nd, 1869 in Porbandar, India. I was a very fortunate child because I was born into a higher level caste, which granted me a good education. My mama's name was Budavali Gandhi and my father's name was Karamchand Gandhi. Now, my father was a very smart man. He was Prime Minister of Porbandar, a very political person. He told me one day I would grow up and become smart and follow in his footsteps, and indeed I did. When I was 18, I was accepted to University College London. I wanted to become a lawyer, so I studied at University College London for 5 years. One very exciting day, I received news that I could go to a farm in Natal, South Africa for a year. Well, I accepted this contract immediately. Well, instead of a year in Natal, I extended 20 more years to the contract. While I was in Natal, I found a common problem where the people where I was living had injustice of racial segregation. I have one specific memory that is the perfect example. I was on a train in first class going to Pittsburgh when the conductor came into my sitting room and asked, "Why are you sitting in first class? There are no colored people in first class." I told him I always ride in first class. He asked me to remove myself from first class carriage, but in a more furious way. But I protested and said, "I always ride in first class." I then showed him my ticket. Face red, he cursed and threw me and my luggage off the train at the next station, literally threw me. This experience taught me a very important lesson. The problem will not change until someone tries to change it. Whether they fail or succeed, either way the problem will change once someone tries. As I always say, you must be the change you wish to see in the world. So I decided to face the problem. I started on my second step after being a lawyer. I started a political movement called the Natal Indian Congress. My main objective was to stop injustice of racial segregation without violence. Non-violence is the greatest force at the disposal of mankind. It is mightier than the mightiest weapon of destruction devised by the ingenuity of mankind. 1916, I was returning to India. I would stop at villages that were being oppressed by British officials and would encourage them to practice peaceful protest marches. At the time when I was doing these actions, it spread through India very quickly. People started referring to me as the Mahatma, which means great soul. At the time, India was under British rule. Many Indian citizens were forced into lower castes, and the British officials took their places in the higher ones. So tensions grew between the British and the Indian citizens. By 1921, I was leading the Indian National Congress. So now I was leading both the Natal Indian Congress and the Indian National Congress. Oh, much work it was. To be honest, I solved the biggest problem and I took more attention to the Indian National Congress. My actions and protests were magnificent. I started my march to an independent India. I even started working on boycotting British goods and principles. This led to my arrest. March 10th, 1922. My trial took place. Many pleased faces attended to the session, but even more outraged ones. I was put in prison for 2 years out of a 6-year sentence. In February of 1924, I was released. Even after being in prison for 2 years, it still did not stop my journey for an independent India, and my next act was my biggest of all, the Great Salt March. The British had assigned a new tax on salt, so of course I found a major protest opportunity out of this. I led 3,000 men on a 250-mile journey to the sea so I could collect and make my own Indian-made salt. This made a huge blow to the British rule. After this, I decided to do more peaceful protest marches. When times would get rough, I would fast until the violence would stop because the protesters could not bear to lose me. January 30th, 1948. I was on my way to a prayer meeting in Delhi. A crowd marched behind me in support of my actions. A man named Nathan Golds was in the crowd to my side. He stepped out in front of me and bowed. So, to be polite, I bowed back. I then heard 3 loud cracks and felt a sudden coldness. I could then see that he had pulled a gun from his jacket and fired 3 shots into my chest. My nieces caught me and laid me down on my back. Haram, Haram, I said. Oh God, oh God. I had been killed at the side of my 2 nieces on a walk to a prayer. I am not ashamed of my death, nor can I say that I was ready to go. But the good thing is that I was doing what was right and what I loved. My life is my message. Thank you all very much.